Solano. Today we're doing like a special walkthrough, getting started with all the different plugins. It's a little different than the normal format, but please do still chime in with questions. Basically the idea is I'm going to be showing how to get things started, and then your questions will help me, better present the material and the tools.
All right. Yeah. And I'll sort of act as a moderator. So Polano, if you want to, you're always awesome at like raising, using the raise hand button anyway, but like between you and I and whoever else joins, I'll pay attention to the chat too, while Brian sort of walks through. Yeah. And I'm excited to see it too, because my understanding, Brian, is you're going to be like walking through from essentially nothing installed to getting all of the stuff set up and squared away, which I think is going to be useful for the community. So
awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Well, why don't you hop into it? I'm also going to go on mute because there is construction like literally below me. They're redoing my front door. So I will be quiet. Right.
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, you guys are ready for me to get started. I'll just start sharing my screen and start going along with the flow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. First, let me share my screen. I think I'm actually going to have to share my full screen, so this way I can switch between the Smart Connect app and Obsidian when it is time. So I can no longer see you guys. Can you see my screen okay?
It seems really small on my end. Like, is it super zoomed in on yours, Polano?
Yeah, also.
Yeah.
So zoom in some more, like that.
Zoom in significantly less. Like I only see like maybe the top quarter of a browser is what I'm looking at right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did I? Let me try resharing my screen again, because maybe. Oh, you know what? I don't think I shared my entire screen like I meant to.
Yeah. Either that or you work on the world's smallest monitor. All right, that looks way better.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, we see your notes now. Is that what we're supposed to see?
Yes. Zero to hero demo video. Yeah. Let's get started. Okay, so basically, to get started with smart connections, we're just going to do the typical install. And we just install the plugin and we enable it, and the magic starts happening immediately. In the background, we have the smart environment getting set up, and that includes embedding the notes with a local embedding model that comes built in to the application. And we can see the embedding processing here on the side. While that's finishing up, let's get started with the Smart Connect app. So the Smart Connect app is what allows us to talk directly to our Obsidian through ChatGPT. There's a sign-in button. I'm going to assume that you already have your connection key and email. Mine is already saved in the login screen. So I log in, and then when I go back to the Smart Connect app, we can see it's signed in here under the connection settings. So,
hey, Brian, I got a quick question for you.
Yes.
Can you describe a little bit more what the Smart Connect app was? How might I find the place to download it? Where do I get that? What is it, and why is it different than the plugin? Real quick.
Yes. So the Smart Connect app is a standalone application that opens up a tunnel between ChatGPT and your local computer. So to get the application, there is a GitHub that allows you to download the application for Mac, Windows, and Linux. I can provide a link to that. I'll do that real quick here. Let's bring up GitHub /Smart Connect, and I will paste that. I think I have a Miro board. Yep, the Miro board is over here. So I will just paste that into here. And we'll be able to, share that link later, I suppose, wherever this video ends up. Does that answer your question, or do you want me to go into a little bit deeper about what's going on?
No, I think that answers the question. I think, yeah, having that link and knowing that it opens a tunnel. I guess one more question to use this Smart Connect app. I think at certain iterations there's been like subscriber, or it's like a paid for kind of thing. Can you quickly just sort of shed some light on that?
Yes. So the subscription is $20 a month for the connection key, which allows you to open up that tunnel because it requires me to run a server that basically makes the bridge between ChatGPT and your computer. And that happens without storing any data on that server. It's just a very simple server that it maintains a connection so that ChatGPT can, connect, and then also so your computer can connect. So cool. That's where the reasoning for it needing to be a subscription comes in. If you're a supporter of the project, your supporter key also works as a connection key. And right now, it doesn't matter when you subscribed or when you became a supporter, the connection key still works. But in the future, the connection key will be limited to 3 months from the time you become a supporter. And then after that, you'll need to subscribe for a connection key.
Cool.
So does that
you can still use Smart Connections, the plugin, for free. The Smart Connect tunnel that you just set up is a thing that we can use to have that tunnel itself. So, okay, got it.
Yes.
Thanks.
And the connection key is only required for those ChatGPT specific actions. But before we dive into Smart Connect some more, I'll show you that now that Smart Connections has finished loading, we can see we have connections on the side here where we can expand them to see, what is the relevant information to this current note we're looking at. If we switch notes, I clicked on the PKM blogs and websites. The first result is PKM courses and tutorials, just some relevant content from within the vault. And you can see there's no links in this note, but it's still found, okay, this is a relevant result to what we're currently looking at. That's the gist of Smart Connections. It's simply to show you relevant, similar content to what you're currently looking at. Back in the Smart Connect app, we can start a new environment, and we're going to want to name it the same as the Obsidian vault that we're working in. And the name of your Obsidian vault can be found down here on the bottom left corner. In this case, it's Smart Vault. And we can select to have the Smart Vault folder here, select that folder for, to finish setting up the smart environment. Now, if we hit start, it's going to load the smart environment similar to like what happens in Obsidian. It's the same core. The smart environment is a shared open source core that's used by the smart plugins and the Smart Connect app. And it reuses the same data, and all of that data is accessible to you in the .smartenv folder. So this is, inspired by Obsidian's file over app philosophy. The purpose here is to keep all of the data accessible to you so you can utilize it for other purposes, other than just this app. I won't get into that just yet, but the idea is that it will also allow other developers to build on top of the smart environment to provide additional experiences that utilize AI technologies, from embeddings to language models and whatever else comes out we can integrate with the smart environment. So now that we have the smart environment loaded in Smart Connect, I'm going to show you something that happened here in Obsidian. So when you first install Smart Connect and load the environment, if I refresh the plugins, we'll see we have 3 new plugins. We have the Smart Connect plugin here, we have the Smart Editor plugin, and the Smart Plugins plugin. The first plugin enables there to be a connection between the Smart Connect app and the Obsidian. The Smart Editor plugin allows us to see changes when the ChatGPT wants to move a note to a new folder, or if it wants to improve a note and change the content within the note, the Smart Editor plugin allows us to see those changes before they are made to the file. And this is to prevent AI from just going on and changing notes and potentially losing data. Like you would hate to lose an important note because AI just went wild and changed things. So that Smart Editor plugin was very important to me as somebody who very carefully curates the content within my Obsidian. I really wanted to have a way to make sure I know what AI is adding or changing in my vault. Now, I'm going to restart Obsidian so that those plugins become active and the smart environment reloads. And while that is reloading, we can open up the Smart Connect app again. And
question for you, Brian, is the restart of the app there, is that sort of like the best practice if you're starting from scratch? Like once you've installed Smart Connect the first time, just go ahead and restart Obsidian.
I do recommend doing that, at least for now. It's one of those things that in time, as the software becomes more mature, there will be less potential issues from, just like installing the extra plugins. Yeah. But, at this point, a lot of times, there could be little inconsistencies that cause issues down the road. So I do tend to restart quite frequently just to avoid any potential issues. So if you're watching this, soon after its release, yes, restart. Down the road, it may not be as important.
All right, and one more question. Hopefully, I'm not interrupting your flow here. Smart Plugins plugin. It's not only a great name because it makes us, I think it made us all chuckle. But could you explain real quickly what the Smart plugin does?
So it makes me chuckle too. But essentially, it is another plugin index. So I'm just going to click on it here, and you can see we have these additional plugins that we can install, which we'll do here shortly. Well, okay. While we're here, we'll install some. We'll install Smart Chat. We can install the Smart Context. We can install Smart Connections Early Release, Smart Chat GPT, and Smart Sources. And basically, this is just an alternative to the Obsidian Community Plugins Index, which allows me to ship out more plugins faster. And, this way, when I'm experimenting with my own workflows and I come up with a new tool, I can just, quick ship it out to people like you guys here that are familiar with my work, you're familiar with Obsidian, and you're able to wade through plugins that may not be, ready for prime time. These are plugins that, I'm scratching my own itch. And I assume a lot of people also have these itches. So I want to get them out there, but there is a big barrier to getting them on the Obsidian community, community index.
That makes sense. So if I were to sort of like play that back, the Smart Plugins plugin is a way, to transparently provide access to, the community on other plugins that you might work with without going through the normal. I'm assuming what you're saying then is like to get on the community plugin and like official community plugin Obsidian, there's some sort of like review thing, which probably does serve some positive purpose. So it's not just like a free for all, but your use case, it makes sense to have this other like sort of entry point specifically for the sub community. Is that sort of what you're? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And it also allows me to make sure like some plugins are only available if you're authenticated. For example, that Smart Editor plugin that I mentioned that was automatically installed when you sign into Smart Connect. So that plugin specifically, it's one of the hardest things I've ever worked on. So, the problem of showing you the changes, developers are very familiar with this thing called Git, and it shows you the changes between a previous version of a file and a new version of a file. And that has been a core part of my workflow for using AI to write code, is being able to review these changes. And I knew that I had to bring this into Obsidian because it was the only way that I would be able to have AI assist me with my notes, similar to how it assists me with the code. And, part of it being so challenging, I thought, and in past calls, we've talked about like, oh, how can Brian give away all these things for free and like survive? Well, my hope is that Smart Editor will be one of these things that help me survive. So the plan is right now it's available if you have a connection key. It's available to Smart Connection supporters. And there will also be a third opportunity to pay one time. So you pay one time for the license key. It'll be cheaper than the support license, but it'll also be more than the $20 a month if you get it via the Smart Connect app. And I'm hoping that that'll be another way to generate revenue for the project. Because like I said, the plugin, it was just so difficult. I've literally been working on it for 6 months. I think that there's, an opportunity here to, market that. So,
cool. Right. Excellent. That makes sense. Sorry, it pulls you off of like the smart plugin thing now makes sense as it's a smaller sort of access point to some specific things. So sorry to derail the thing. I think we're probably good on that point, and I'm glad you shared about that. So.
Okay, yeah, and that's where this there's a login at the top, so basically it automatically logs you in if you log into Smart Connect. But if you weren't going the Smart Connect route, you'd be able to get this plugin and log in with whatever access key you have.
Okay.
Okay, so while we're here, before we get back into the Smart Connect app, let's configure the plugins that we just installed so that when we go to check those out, they work. So I have this API key here. A few of these plugins utilize the OpenAI API or whatever other API you want to use. Since they all connect back to that same smart environment, the smart environment has a universal chat model, which currently serves the majority of the most popular chat platforms, from Anthropic, Google's Gemini, OpenAI, of course, OpenRouter, and even some compatibility with Ollama for local models. The local models tend to have some issues, but I won't get into that now. So let's set up some of these plugins. So we have this Smart Sources plugin. Smart Sources, I'm putting in my API key, and we're going to select the model. We can go to 4.1 mini. This allows us to import images into our smart environment. I think I heard a question pop up in the background there.
Hi, Brian. For me, what I want to ask is, are we trying to go through everything in one call? Because it seems like there's a lot to go through, For me, I would value just picking like the first few things, diving into them, getting the use case, showing the value, the leverage points, and then from there, expanding on them. I feel like because there's so much, you're going through so many things that we don't really get to digest, one of the items. I don't know, you have your own way. But for me, as I would assume this is like a marketing video, or can be used as marketing video, or at least educational content. Both on those elements, we're moving away from the goal that would be valuable to the novice user. I don't know. That's just from my perspective.
I think that is a great insight, and I'm ready to go whatever direction. So if there's something specific you would like me to talk about, just let me know, because in preparation for this, I was like, okay, well, let me make sure everything's working. All of these things, I can set them up and they work. And I just published 2 videos that go through that. So we do not have to hit all of those things on this call. I would be happy to diverge from that, just setting everything up. So what are your thoughts? Do you have a specific direction that might guide me in a way that'll be more helpful?
Okay, for me, what I would say would be the best approach would be for us to find where are the strongest anchors. So from my perspective, we have the Smart Connect app on Obsidian, which is anchor number 1, the biggest anchor. Understanding how that app works, logging in, its utility, and all those those nuances and value points would be great. Secondary to that, we have the Smart Connects app, which is then like a different thing entirely, and that expands upon the understanding of what the Smart plugin does, or the Smart Connect plugin does. And then once we then have those two elements, we can then go into the accessory plugins on the side to then, you know, deeper that value chain. But for me, I would, you know, start with the Smart Connections plugin on Obsidian. What that does is use case, its utility, flesh that out, give that some breadth, and then from there expand on top of that. Say, okay, cool, but now we have something more whereby perhaps you like to use your AI with ChatGPT. If you like to do that, we also have this Smart Connections app, which does the following, and then we go into that one, we dive deep into that one, building upon the understanding and basis of what the Smart Connections app already is. And then from there, once we understand those two elements, you have one more thing, which would then be those adjacent or indexed plugins that you have to then increase that workflow. That's how I would approach the presentation. But that's for me from what I understand. Obviously, I don't know the whole project and how everything works, but that's my understanding of the environment we're building here.
Okay, so you would like me to start with Smart Connections?
Yeah.
Okay, we have another hand raised, so let's see. Shogi, thanks for joining us. I have not, seen you in one of these meetings before, so thanks for participating. What is your question? And you are on mute currently.
Am I audible now? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm the right audience, but this is, I'll just tell you where I come from. And I'd like you to just help me out. I'm a very novice person here in AI matters. But I come from a long-standing journey of note-taking. I've been from Evernote, 12, 13, 14 years. So I've probably mastered Evernote. And I'm also associated with a lot of Evernote stuff. But the point is, back in the day, Evernote in 2014-15, when it was at its peak, had the feature called related notes. That was my first. It was augmented intelligence, and that was my introduction. I really loved that feature. So I'm not a very technical person, but I'm slowly moving into Obsidian, and I'm feeling the old vibe of Evernote. So now here's my thing. So we're all using ChatGPT and Perplexity mainly for me. It's moving away from Google search, and I'm using more towards Perplexity. I don't know the internal and technical stuff of this. But what I would like to know is, once I mirror my Evernote notes into Obsidian, my old notes, and I migrate them, my research work and everything, I would like some sort of an AI assist, which is already there in Evernote now. It is there, but you can't customize it and stuff like that. It's what the system gives it to you. So what I would like to know is that, will we have some simple videos for noobs? That will easy for us to just look and plug it in, and we will be able to use our Obsidian notes. I'm pretty confident about the note-taking part, but the technical part is something. Will I be able to copy and paste the ideas what you're doing in the videos, or I'm totally a misfit for this sort of thing? That's what I want to know. Yeah.
So Matthew just shared a couple links in the chat of 2 videos where I walk through setting everything up. And it should be pretty straightforward. And my audience that I'm creating these tools for is while they may be more technical, because, the Obsidian audience tends to be more technical than the average person, it is still designed for non-developers. So I think that the answer is yes, you will be able to use these things without any significant technical overhead. And check out those videos and get back to me on whether or not you think those videos are helpful, or if there's something else I should go into. So getting back to...
I think Polano's suggestions you gave, I think Polano's suggestion and those videos are probably actually, like, I truly believe in the next 30 minutes, if we just move through with sort of the vein of what Brian was intending to do and what Polano suggested, we're going to get your question answered. And so how about this? We can also circle back at the end if we don't see yet. We'll make sure that we get that question answered. So my suggestion at this point, so hold on. No, so my suggestion at this point, Brian, keep moving forward because we do have an agenda and we meet. The good thing is, we meet every 2 weeks. So yes, there is a community and we can get you hooked up with that. So Brian, now truly a sprint, 30 minutes following sort of the track. Keep moving forward.
Okay, we can do this. So getting back, we have the Smart Connections side panel. It's number one, just for referencing similar notes. Just some quick things you can do with it is if this note particularly looks like something that should be linked from the current note, you can just go and drag that into your current note. So this will allow you to build links for your notes so that they're there for future reference and quickly finding what's relevant. What you can do is you can use these exclude in links and exclude out links to reduce the notes in this results pane. So you can see I just dragged in this core components of PKM here. Now, if we refresh, the core components results are now gone because it is linked from this note already. And similarly, we have this Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. We can drag that in there, refresh, and then no longer do we have Building a Second Brain. We have another second brain note, but not this note that is particularly linked. Just quickly, these settings, you can show the full path in the results. If you want to see folders, you can change the number of results, and you can also filter the results using these settings. Just to dive into the settings a little bit more, this smart environment with show smart environment settings is starting to appear in all of these smart plugins. These are the core environment settings. This allows you to clear all of your data and then you can reload sources. This will allow you to make sure that everything is embedded properly. If you think there might be an issue, you can just go clear all the data and reload. And you have the option a little further down to select your embedding model. Transformers is the built-in local model, and you have some options for local models that you can use. And then, of course, there's the OpenAI API models that are also available. Smart blocks are the more granular type of, they're like excerpts of your notes, and you'll see a lot of the results seem to appear to come from the same note, and that's because they're actually excerpts from those notes. So if we click on them, we'll see there's, from the same note, chunks of content rather than the entire note. If you turn off the blocks, then you see the entire note, and there will only be a single result for each of the notes. We can check that out. This is one of those things that might require a restart to get it working, but I'll just do a quick restart and then jump into the Smart Connect app again, because I want to show you how you can create a custom GPT using the actions in Smart Connect. So Smart Connect and soon, the Smart Chat plugin in Obsidian will allow you to basically create your own actions. This might, that's a little bit further than the scope of this video, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom GPT with a couple new actions that'll be soon built in to a Notes version 3 GPT. These actions are primarily draft change and draft move. And let's also pull in the list folders and the alignment action. And there's one more I wanted to add, retrieve. So retrieve will allow the GPT to actually retrieve notes. In the Smart Connect app, when we add these actions, what we can do is we can say, auto create the custom GPT. Auto creating the custom GPT will follow these instructions here. Basically take the, this OpenAPI URL and create a GPT that has access to these actions that we just added to this custom GPT. When it's complete, the GPT URL will appear in this field here. And since it appeared, we can close out that little window and we can open up the custom GPT in our browser. And since it automatically created the GPT, it has some placeholders. In the near future, the instructions section will have some default instructions that come with each of the actions, but that is yet to be implemented. So let's grab, I have some pre-made instructions here. We can.
While you're grabbing those, let me just make sure I track that. You programmatically created a custom GPT through the Smart Connect app.
So I actually find it to be more fascinating than just that, because I actually used a custom smart action. So, you know, I mentioned you can like create smart actions to add to the software so that you can give GPT even more abilities.
Yeah.
And the way that this was created was through a custom smart action. So in theory, I can add an action to a GPT that creates new GPTs.
Okay, cool. So the answer to that is essentially yes, and there's some Brian magic that we can learn in another deep dive later.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
So
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Like I saw it, like it went so fast through all of those things. I saw you selecting all of the actions that you wanted, and then you got to a point where it generated a thing, and now all of a sudden you're in like something hosted in Chat GPT that was, I'm guessing, correlated to what you just did. And the answer to that was yes, that's what just happened. Okay, cool. We're good. We're good for now. We can keep moving forward there with that. Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, it was relatively simple. You know, it's just automating a browser, and I figured it's easier to just throw that together than to have to explain like, here are the 6 different steps where you have to copy and paste this information. You know, instead of doing that, just one-click it.
I'm tracking.
Okay, so
appreciate it. Thank you. Cool.
Let's go back into this vault here, and I'm going to mess it up a little bit. Let's take this. We'll take that note and throw it into the inbox. Let's throw that note into the inbox. And let's throw one more note into the inbox. Okay. The reason for that is because then when we go into the GPT, what we did is we added the draft move action. Okay, let's restart that. Find my inbox folder by listing my folders, and then get the contents of my inbox folder. So basically what I want to do is I want to take those notes we just moved to the inbox. Oh, I keep forgetting this. The first time you use the GPT, you have to allow the GPT to interact with the action. So let's hit always allow, and then it should go and, you know, find those notes. It found my inbox folder. It looks like it's currently empty. And this is where one of those restarts that we mentioned earlier comes in. Let's restart that, and let's look in my inbox folder again to find the notes. And now it should find those notes. Okay, we don't really need to know what's inside, so let's just move on to the next step. Please organize the notes from my inbox into existing folders using the draft move action. And now this is where the first introduction to Smart Editor comes in. So what just happened is Smart Editor detected that we had a new draft come in, and it says it wants to move this note into that folder, and we can move it now. And it, once again, has another suggested move, and we can move it. And there's a bit of a bug here. Let's turn that off. Basically, there's a little bit of an ordering. It's like a race condition, but you know, let's just have it move the last file from my inbox. Again, so yeah, that's a little bug that I need to get worked out. Basically,
Okay, so just to recap what just happened, you used this new custom GPT that you generated and published. You made sure that access was allowed. And you essentially had your personal workflow has a folder called inbox. And the thing that you wanted to do was to have ChatGPT go ahead and move notes that are in your inbox to what it believed was the appropriate folder to organize it. So you told it to do that. It attempted to do that, and before it actually committed to doing that, it prompted you in Obsidian that there was a request to move some things, and you approved those requests. That's
Exactly.
kind of what happened. Okay, cool.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a slight bug based on it. I won't get into the
You don't have to worry about
details.
Yeah, well done. Good
that
self-discipline there, Brian. We don't need to know the nitty-gritty of your bug. You nailed it. So
yeah, it will be fixed very shortly.
Cool. Okay.
Let's see what else we can do with that. So
did you do something where you use like you edit the contents of notes or maybe reformat some notes or things like that?
Get content from another folder and improve the notes. So
Right.
I think this is what you were asking.
Yeah, by the way, we're not going to be able to hear the audio, which is totally fine. Just so you know, we're not going to be able to hear its response.
Okay.
I mentioned in the chat that this morning I imported a very long bullet point list from ChatGPT, but it had line breaks after every bullet point. So I came into your Smart Connect Notes V2 and said, take that note, remove all of the bullet points on this, remove all of the spaces between the bullet points on this 100-point list, change the headings to this, and away it went. So I found it really useful for really long repetitive tasks where you don't want to go through and do a ton of editing, but it will just jump in and do it for me.
Yes. Awesome. And thanks for joining, Jason. Okay, so I just asked the ChatGPT to improve some notes. So once again, we're seeing this notification about, do I want to review changes or skip? There's some background logic here that basically makes it so you will not lose drafts. And that's why it says review changes or skip. If you skip this, there will still be a draft file. In this case, it's down here. And when you open that draft file, it gives you the opportunity to review changes again. So let's review changes. And we can see that it wants to remove a lot of this, and you can see by what's highlighted in darker red or a more bright red. I don't know how to describe it. That's the stuff that's actually removed. And then down in the green section, the stuff that's brand new is highlighted in a brighter green. And we can approve that, and we can check out some of the other drafts and review changes. And there is one more thing I will show, which is after we review these changes, but we do not go to review the changes, we can open, and let's just go to another random note. We can open changes, open pending changes. And now we see on the right-hand side, we have 2 files with pending changes. So we can open up that file. We can approve that change and approve that change. And then we can open up the other file and approve that change. So then this way, if there are a lot of changes made and you didn't have time to, catch up with them immediately, you can go see what pending changes are available on the side here.
Can you clarify that pending changes? Is that just a toolbar on the right that shows up if you enable, what is that again? It looks like, obviously it looks like a backlog of things that could change, but are you essentially describing that there's 2 user experiences that prompt you for accepting changes that the smart editor did?
Yeah, so there's basically a 2-step process of what's going on. So when a new draft is created, it's putting a draft file into your Obsidian. And that means that whether or not you have the smart editor active and enabled and installed and it's all ready, whether or not that's true, those drafts are saved in a file so that even if you wanted to go through and review it manually, it's there for you. Then when you say review changes, that file disappears and those changes become changes within the smart environment. The architecture, like how that works, it becomes a change within the data. That data is still available through the files in your smart env folder, but it's more of a, like at that point it gets converted to JSON, and, so it's no longer just a note within your vault. Right now, there's a way to turn that off so the note always stays there, but that's really only intended for debugging purposes. But after that file gets converted into these changes within the smart environment, and I'm going to go on that in just a minute about why that's important. But when that happens, since there's no longer a file, this pending changes here is sort of like an inbox that allows you to access those changes. And to get to that, what I did is I went into my command palette, and there is this smart editor open pending changes command. And that is what opens this view on the right, which is essentially an inbox for the pending changes. Now,
okay, so to connect this through like the happy path of what Polana was sort of, and I loved what Polana was suggesting earlier. We had the smart connections plugin, free. Everybody can do that. It has just comparison of stuff, and then we have the Smart Connect app. That Smart Connect app gives you a way to establish better access to the smart environment, which allows you to create this custom GPT. Custom GPT allows you to interact through ChatGPT. When it makes those changes and interactions, there's essentially notes that can get created, and almost like an AI assisted workflow that allows you to work with your notes. It creates files, like essentially new notes in your Obsidian for the changes it'd like to make, and it prompts you, do you want to review these or not? Additionally, there's sort of another layer where if you do want to explore those changes, it actually sort of builds it deeper into your smart, connections land. To like a system to allow you to go through and look through those things. So it's just different levels of abstraction and different levels of ways that we can start to have our workflows intertwined with AI.
Exactly. So, and why that becomes important is there's another way we can make a draft here. And, for demonstration purposes, let's create this draft. And I'm going to say add links to the note. And then, so this is a way to create drafts using the API instead of ChatGPT. So if you don't want to use ChatGPT for whatever reason, you can set up an API thing. And I'm adding context. So what I did is I clicked this build context button here at the bottom of where I put in my instructions. And then I was able to add some context. And then we say create draft, and then it's creating a draft. It added this line here with some links in it based on that context. I hit refresh pending changes, and we can see that there's the one change in this file. We can approve that, but this is a good time for me to say why does having this built into the smart environment data matter? And it gets back to this concept that we've discussed before in previous meetings, which is the progression dimension. Each time we approve or discard this change, we are saving data that we can use to show the AI in future, at future moments when we want to draft some content. We could say, hey, and by the way, these are the most recent approved changes. It went from this to that, from this to that. So then now all of a sudden, the AI has this context of what's the direction we're going. It's not just that we have this context here in this static state. It's we have this context that shows I was here and then I was here. And in time, this user interface that allows us to approve or discard changes, and even with the moving, like when you're moving files, just being able to track where things were moved, that can be used as context for the models in the future to better understand how to help you make progress inside of your notes.
Okay. I'm gonna try to recap again, and then Jason, I saw you raise your hand, and then Polana after that. So if I go back to what you just did, one, you did something I wasn't particularly aware of. You had this create draft. Did you create a new note, or was that editing an existing draft?
That was editing the existing note.
Okay, it was editing an existing note that maybe you had open, and you essentially told it to do some more linking for some things, and that's what had it generate that extra line. So that's what that command sort of brought up with the prompt. Okay, cool. So you did that.
Correct.
And so that's one question. And subsequently, the point you were just making is the power of having the smart environment not just know your static notes, but know how you're changing things, and the way you go about changing things in the direction is, my understanding is that, would that be synonymous with like not only having the smart environment know the static things, but also start to sort of self-train itself as it goes along? It's starting to mimic and understand how you're thinking about organizing notes, which is like another dimension of how it could get better at giving you responses. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
In short, I'm sure all of you have heard of this concept called fine-tuning. What that looks like is you're giving pairs of data. So you have basically, when this happens, then this should happen. And you're feeding lots of these pairs of this, then that to the model. The thing is as the models get better, we no longer have to provide it with thousands, tens of thousands, or potentially even more pairs of data. And instead, we could have an amount of data that is simply the amount of the approves and discards that you did inside of this UI, and it should be able to basically take that information, like this before and after information, and utilize it in a way that produces an output that is just like if you were to have fine-tuned a model on much more data.
Awesome. That answered my question. Let's go to Jason, then Polana. So Jason, your question.
Yeah, I guess I see the taxonomy slightly different on this. If I look at Obsidian, then I've got my Smart Connect embeddings for related notes. I've got Smart Lookup, where I can actually go in and do typing and pull that up as a panel. And I've got Smart Chat, where I can actually do the connections within that. And that's with all in the Obsidian interface. And then if I move over to either a window, a sidebar window, or another web browser, then I've got ChatGPT. And the two ways that I interact with that are either I want to do admin, editing, search, organization, in which case I'm using a Smart Connections Notes custom GPT, or I want to use one of the higher end models and I want to use O3 or whatever. And for that, then I'm using the Smart Context plugin in order to take a ton of data across, 70K worth of tokens, boom, into the top of that. I'm asking questions, bringing stuff out, and then I can copy and paste that into my notes. So I've got the AI stuff built into the interface, into Obsidian. I've got custom GPTs for a particular use case, and I've got the higher end GPT models that I'm bringing context across and then can do all kinds of clever things there. Is that, am I missing anything there?
No, I think that's perfect, because my purpose here is to develop tools that they're not all dependent on each other, but instead they are like interdependent in a way where you can pick your own ensemble of these tools and utilize them how you see best fit. Just a quick show what I think you were mentioning. So, this is the Smart Context. The Smart Context, plugin. I can go copy context, or let's see, copy current note to clipboard. I have a hotkey, a Control-Shift key, allows me to quickly call this command. And then I can select a depth of 1, and that includes these links that are in this note in the background. Including a link depth of 1 will make sure it pulls all the content from those notes in addition to the content in this current note. And we can paste it down here at the bottom to see how it copies the context. It includes this little file folder structure at the top to give additional context to the AI. And then I have this smart chat GPT code block here that I like to include in my Obsidian because it allows me to bookmark past threads that are specific to this note. And what that looks like in the code block is there's actually URLs stored here in my note. So that then when I go and I can paste that same context that I copied using the smart context thing or the smart context plugin, and I could just say summarize. And this is actually my most powerful workflow. My most powerful workflow is simply being able to create notes that have ChatGPT built in. They have the context built in through linking so that I can quickly retrieve context about a project and then have an assignment note that keeps the progress of that project in one spot. And then when ChatGPT is done, there's an output. And right now, something I'm trying to figure out, which is my current bottleneck, Jason, you might have the same issue, is I'm able to submit so much context and so many assignments to ChatGPT using this workflow here where I have a note with context and then I quickly copy it and submit it into ChatGPT, that my bottleneck is now reviewing the output from the ChatGPT. It's doing so much for me that now I'm getting stuck at, I need to review all these things I had it do.
So management, right? It always ends up as management. I mean, using that's my most powerful workflow, very similar, but I actually send it in the morning, probably the last month of journal entries and work of everything that I've done over the past 3 weeks. And then say, good morning, the date is Friday 18th, it's 8 a.m. Attaches context for everything I've been working on and thinking on in the last 2 months. And today I'm doing this, and I'll have a little like calendar block, away we go. And so it will ingest all of that and be like, good morning, Jason. Seems like a good day. Seems like you've been working on blah, blah, blah. And basically I've got like an action coach, that I can actually talk about everything that's happened in the past 3 or 4 weeks.
Cool.
Yes. Have you tried it with advanced voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that's a new workflow I'm experimenting with. Copy a lot of context and then turn on advanced voice.
So I use Super Whisper together with this as well. So essentially, I'll cut all the context over, press a key shortcut, and then just talk my prompts into ChatGPT, and then it knows from the setup that I like the outputs in Obsidian flavored markup, so that then it'll give me a code block that then I can just bring back in. So I'm with you. I think that the whole when I don't just want the administration of it, but I really want to use, I love 4.5 as a talking partner, and then actually talking to it with all of the context of a particular project, so that then I can create new notes, and then I'll drop into smart connections to see what else I can link it to. It really does sort of link in a variety of ways.
So I know. Powerful. So first of all, I have so many questions about this that I think we need to have a whole nother video on all of that stuff. But I know we got 2 minutes left here. Polano, I know you've been patiently waiting. Do you still even remember your question? And if so, could you go ahead and tie us off here with it?
Yeah, 4 things. First of all, this conversation went so quickly. There's so much information. It's been really hard to really map everything out. And usually I'm good at that, but it was quite interesting. I guess the bandwidth. Anyway, point being, number 2, it's very interesting to see the workflows of other people and the nature of how work has changed in life, and being able to bounce off and see other AI users and their use cases is very, very enlightening. My workflow right now, what I've been doing is just literally taking the Obsidian markdown files and putting them into Claude, and then doing that manually. Then from there, I'm seeing that I have to then see the balance of leveraging this workflow, the effort of learning the workflow also, because we're going so quickly in the world of AI now that learning a new skill has its also drawbacks, and you have to balance that. But now going to the question that I had initially was that progression dimension element that you were talking about there, Brian, whereby, first of all, thank you for enlightening us on how that fine-tuning element actually works and why it was no longer valuable as GPT went from 3 to 4, such that now at 4's level, it requires less data to then be able to then fine-tune its output based on your suggested inputs. Now from here, what I didn't quite understand, and for me, why it's important to me is if I understand the fundamental elements of how the system is built and it's, like the element, the mechanics behind it, I can then lean in towards that and learn how to leverage it to then get better outputs. So with that progression dimension element that you're talking about, how does that actually work in terms of like, how does it learn? And what is its like learning parameters? Like it's looking at the node structure, and from there it sees the node structure. Does it look at node patterns, dates of nodes being outputted? What are these parameters? And then how can we leverage that to then see what's the highest point of leverage, then move forward in that learning progression dimension?
Great question. So it really actually, I think I share a lot of the same perspective as you, where you got to really know like how these fundamental things work so that you can start using them as building blocks, right? So where I'm at is I'm still building these fundamental building blocks from a code side. And where does the progression dimension come in? Well, I just showed you how we get the data, right? Like, you can approve and discard stuff, and now we're starting to collect the data. Where is that data used? And that is where that smart context, where we're copying lots of notes all at once, that is actually going to be the platform for where we inject that progression data. And, right now the plan with the smart context is first to implement rules. Rules will allow us to basically inject certain prompts or templates depending on which context is included in all of that context that is being copied, but it'll also allow us to specify certain types of progression that could be included. So, and just to go back a little bit, so that smart context plugin is primarily used by users right now to just copy lots of context to their clipboard. However, it's also used on the back end in features like Smart Chat in the Smart Editor. When that Smart Editor is creating a draft and you select that context, it is using the same back end to build the context that is sent to the API model as if you were copying it to your clipboard. And the way I design the architecture is to make all these things configurable, number one, by developers, but then the developers can make those configurations available through user interfaces, and that's what I'm going to do with the rules. So we can like conditionally include different prompts depending on what's included in the context, whether or not notes are from a specific folder or whether or not notes have a specific front matter, just for example. But then also we can essentially add a rule that would say, is this a draft that we're working on? If so, now retrieve these different instances of progress that fall under some sort of, maybe it's like heuristics, or maybe it's another sort of algorithm for retrieving those pieces of progression data to include it inside of that context. And when it's in that context, because the models are getting better, we can actually present that progression data slightly differently than when we say, okay, this context is where we are right now. And then we can say, now here's this other chunk of context that shows you the steps that are relevant to how we got to where we are right now, like what changes were made. And, so that presenting of the context to the AI, combined with the AI models getting better and better at being able to understand that context, is how I think that it all ties together to get better results and better outcomes from the model that are closely tied into your environment, your Obsidian Vault, your notes, etc.
Okay. So input 1, input 2, change between that AI learns. What then the idea is that we want it to do is to have like this type of like exponential, whereby it can then see this 2 points of data and say, okay, then the next progressive level would then be this, and then it giving like a throw ball, football, to it be able to like see, okay, because you did 1 and 2 and you did this, potentially you might want to do this. How did that work? And we're like basically playing a game of like, not, I don't say cat and mouse, but like almost like throwing football to the AI, whereby we're throwing ideas in the future and we're wanting to see that we're likely going to catch it, you know, because of the likelihood of catching that and putting that together, which is quite an interesting way to look at the world. But yeah, okay, cool. Sounds good.
I just got a question, Brian, actually. Do you programmatically have access to version history? Because I do often sort of go back actually within the Obsidian vault and can see, you know, how a particular note has progressed. And I guess in the future, we could actually use the version history as well in terms of those kinds of things. Even when we're not doing a cursor windsurf GitHub accept or deny, you know, or you know, review the diffs, which I think is where the draft thing really comes useful for me. But I guess the version history stuff is interesting as well, just looking back through particular notes, and this is the way you normally build them up, and you often have this content, and therefore as an AI I should be heading on doing that as well.
You're spot on. Importing that information is 100% doable. I've thought about doing it in the past, but it just has to do with like the progression of the project. Like, unfortunately, it's easier right now for me to import that version history than it is to make use of that version history. But, you know, as I'm sure you guys are like well aware, like, you know, my goal here is to develop this flexible architecture that allows us, like, you know, some of these ideas you guys are throwing out, they're like, you know, new great ideas, and you need to have the platform to be able to implement them. And I'm trying to develop that as an architecture so we can try these different ways of, you know, basically aggregating the information. As far as importing that data goes, you know, I think that's probably where the adapter architecture comes in. You know, so like basically every component in the software is able to be modified with adapters. You know, so basically just creating an adapter that gets version history from Obsidian Sync, maybe an adapter that gets version history from Git. You know, a lot of people do store their vaults in Git. This is all doable, you know, and it's just about the right time. And, you know, while I wish I could just, I could import the stuff right now, but I'd be like, what can I do with it?
Yeah, I know we're way over time, but I think especially with LLM assisted coding, vibe coding and everything else, actually the most important thing of me creating my own plugin or my own interface or whatever is the documentation for those atomic components and API calls that then an LLM can understand in order to help me start putting together, you know, a JSON smart plugin, or, you know, which actually pulls the last 2 weeks of my journal files automatically and starts inserting them into an LLM, pulling back. And that, you know, that I can do, but I guess it's that documentation stuff.
Yeah, my goal is for you to be able to make that JSON Smart plugin. So stay tuned.
So I got three things. Number one, Jason, if you make a JSON Smart plugin and it's using JSON, it needs to be JSON Smart plugin. So it has to be that. Number two, Brian, this was awesome. Appreciate it. We do have multiple versions of this recording, but you have access to all of like the Google Meet recording, but we also have the Grain recording, which I'll post in our Miro board. Brian, happy to debrief with you on any of this. And I'm assuming a lot of this like new content and things, I think there's just a lot of stuff in future Lean Coffees we'll be able to dig into and pull apart. So Polano, I probably got just as many questions as you around what we just saw. We'll have some time to digest on it. And I think our next meeting, I guess, is probably the 2nd of May. That would have been really cool if it was the 4th of May, because then we could have had Star Wars jokes. Anyway, it's just the 2nd of May. So last thing, Sugith, I didn't forget about you. So this might have been like drinking like just a ton of information right now, but a couple things just so that you're aware. I did post the Miro board in the chat, and I can share my screen real quickly. That Miro board is a register of essentially all of the meetings. You should be able to see my screen now. We're like way down here. I'll post the notes here. But this Miro board is sort of the canvas that we use to keep up with all of our notes from our sessions. And I typically post like a Grain link, which shows up like this, where you can actually look at AI generated notes around, you know, all the previous meetings. And it's not actually working right now. Not entirely sure why. Oh yeah, there it goes. So you can actually see, you know, key takeaways from previous meetings. You have every lean coffee that this community has ever done is still in this board. I'm now getting a little bit nervous that it has all of our things there, and I probably need to archive this somehow. So I'm probably going to do that after this call. But anyway, so that's probably the best place for Sugeeth for you to start to go back and historically look. Like, remember the progression, like we were talking about this progression dimension, you know, back in whenever this was, this would have been, you know, August of, it's been 2 years. So this has been things that we talked, anyway, this is going to be the place Sugeeth and anyone else watching this recording can go to. I don't have my Obsidian open right now, but you'll see that, like, Sugeeth, the link that you got to for this meeting is likely connected to this lean coffee concept. So typically our meetings aren't demos like this. It's more of, let me see if I can find one. It's more of a thing where we crowdsource different topics and we go around the room and sort of talk about different topics. So that might have been what you were expecting. Maybe you weren't expecting anything either way. Our next sessions going forward will be more conversational around all these things. And I think you really just set us up, Brian, with a whole bunch of fertile new topics to talk about in future sessions. So,
and I've got more coming.
Yeah, Polano, you have a question. We can't keep going on forever because I do have to go.
Awesome. Come back to this maybe in 2 weeks' time, or like after a meeting, and doing these ones to help refine our understanding more of these platforms. You know, really get into using them. This is a great one. I'd love to have another one.
I think so too. I'm actually thinking that maybe what we could do is potentially, Brian, and I want to make this be more work than fun for you, but like I would love the idea of, before we end Lean Coffees, voting for a particular feature or thing and have that be preloaded as, hey, between now and then, Brian, can you like put together a bounded like demonstration to kick us off at our next meeting around a topic? So Polano, what I'm thinking, like, as we have different ideas, like get Brian to sort of preload a thing that we're interested in diving deeper into, or not necessarily deeper as in like more technical, more complex, but like a spotlight topic that Brian can be prepared to sort of explain more. If any of us leave sort of unsatisfied from a thing, we could sort of preload that. So anyway, that's a thing we can talk about at
I love that.
Coffees.
I love that idea.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. A special thanks to Matthew. These Lean Coffees have been amazing. The suggestion for this type of meeting was so beneficial to me. It really helped me go through everything. I'm very grateful for you and grateful for everybody for participating. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Take care.